Hi, Rick Burris here for the great Brian F. Peterson, and you keep shooting. Here's the problem. It drives me crazy. Someone will look at a photo of mine and they'll say, wow, it's so crisp. There's so many details. What's the next question out of their mouths? What lens are you using? As if it were about the lens. It's like traveling to a great restaurant in, let's say, a terrific dining city like San Francisco, eating the greatest meal you've ever eaten. And when the chef comes by, insulting the chef by saying, this is the greatest meal I've ever had. What oven do you use? It's insulting because they assume it's just the lens. But no, there are, and today I'll introduce you to 3 tips for getting the sharpest detail, the best clarity in your images in camera. I refer to these as the 3Bs. Let's unpack them. The bubble, blur, and the bends. Bubble, blur, and bends. Let's get to it. The first of the 3Bs is bubble. Bubble, the depth of field. Focus, bubble, as it were. Your image has to be, your subject has to be inside the bubble. Now, how do we do it? I grab my lens I think I'll be using on the photo shoot. I'm not going to get too close to these white rhinos. I'm going to keep my distance. I'm probably 75 to 100 feet away. I'm going to know that. I'm going to need my long lens. And so I can measure my focus bubble on the drive to the park or in the parking lot or sitting on a bench. I measure my focus bubble. That's part 1. I use something like photo pills. Now in photo pills, I've got my stuff and gosh, look at the top, pills and whatever that is, an academy. Wait a minute, pills, there it is. I'm looking for depth of, oh, there it is, DOF, depth of field. And I tap my focal length, in my case with my long lens 500. I change my aperture. I'm being hopeful here. We'll try f8, and then I tell it about how far I'll be from the subject, the rhinos. And when I do that, 3 measurements, then you'll see that I'm about 5 feet 9 inches of depth of field. Notice also that I'll get 2 feet 9 inches in front of my focus point and 2 feet 11 inches or so behind my focus point. So indeed, it matters where I focus. Now, some of you have been taught to focus on the eye, but that would be the wrong location. If I have 5 feet 9 inches of total depth of field, where I get 2 feet 9 inches in front of the item that I focus on and 2 feet 11 inches behind, I might want to focus here on the forehead of the mother. 2 feet 9 inches this way and 2 feet 11 inches that way. You understand what I'm saying? It's what you focus on will become the center of that focus bubble. All right, enough said. Wow, look at the detail here. It's incredible, isn't it? That's what we want to capture. Now, not the background. That's what defines clarity. It's what creates a hero in our image. But wow, that detail, do we want to capture it? We certainly do. Oh, plenty of it, until it begins to fade out. There it is. 2 feet 11 inches behind what I focus on. It starts to fade. Perfect. Just what we want. That's the bubble. The next B is blur. Motion blur. Motion blur, of course, kills your sharpness, kills your detail. Avoid motion blur. The best way to do it is to do the tip I taught last week. Use the 1/over rule. Always set your shutter speed to at least 1 over your camera's focal length. The final B is the bends. Light is a wave, and waves bend. They bend a little when they go through a wide aperture. Pretend that this set of black lines here is an opening of my aperture. Light waves bend as they go through, but not by much if it's a wide aperture. But they bend a lot through a thin aperture. What does that mean? That means when you shoot at f5.6, you get more of the light hitting your sensor, sharper images. When you shoot through a smaller aperture, less of the light comes in contact with your sensor, resulting in not as sharp an image. I can show this to you clearly. Here's an image that I shot at f5.6. It tells you here, f5.6, same image. Now look right here at this area. It's quite clearly sharp, but the same image shot at a much thinner aperture. In this case, I really made it extreme. f36, not sharp at all. Let's go back and forth. f5.6, f36. Everything else, same exposure, everything else, you get sharper images at wider apertures. That's hard to believe because we're so used to a blurry background, but the images themselves will be quite sharp. So you can see that it's not about the chef's oven, nor is it about your lens. There's a lot to it here. You can see that it's work. You have to get the right bubble, the right depth of field. You have to focus at the right place. You have to avoid motion blur when hand-holding your camera in particular. And you have to understand that you get sharper images at lower F numbers, wide open apertures. The light waves pass through. There it is, this week's tip. Oh, what? Oh, I'm told I have to go. How are you going to learn this? How are you going to master this? Well, in the words of the great Brian F. Peterson, you know it already. You keep shooting. You can shoot anywhere, but why don't you shoot with me this May in Santorini, Greece?